also, spread out in Ghana. We've had churches like the Negritian Church, the Christ Apostolic Church. We have the Divine Healers Churches, the African Tabernacle churches, the one that we call Odifo and Cancer and all. There are several of them. We want to try and put the puzzle together and see whether we can close the gaps. Which one came from where, who led what, when it was done, and all those. Now, for this one, I'm inviting you to come along as we tell the story about the independent African churches in Ghana. This is ChannelOne TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. My name is Samuel Atamensa, and this is a special program for our Heritage Month. With me to discuss this interesting topic is our friend, our brother, Kweku Daku Ankra. Kweku, welcome.
Thank you.
You're a doctor, right?
Or no, not yet.
You're not yet. You're in a PhD program.
Yeah.
And that's in history or what?
Yeah, history.
Oh, but you're
African studies.
Oh, okay, African studies. But your first, second degree, history?
No, my master's is African studies.
African studies.
History option.
But first degree was in law, right?
Journalism, and I also have law.
LLB. LLB. Okay. Yeah. Wow. All right. So we'll see how it goes. So you call it African independent churches, right?
Yeah.
And how is that different from the Orthodox churches?
Yeah, so the African independent churches were authentically African movement.
All right.
That was a sort of a call to return to nativity, which was a movement that was grown out of the Aborigines Right Protection Society. Aborigines Right Protection Society at one time, there was too much Europeanization of ideas, of culture, even the way people dress. You see Africans wearing bow ties, three-piece coats, suits and so on. So
those are your people, the fancy people.
So that was for the educated elite. So the educated elite themselves realized that this is also sinking deep into the academic curriculum as well as the church. And then there was the need to Africanize. So as a result, they formed a movement called Gone Fanti movement.
What?
Gone Fanti movement.
Gone Fanti
movement. It means the person has gone Fanti way.
Oh, I see.
It is a return to nativity.
Oh, I see.
And it has come out as a result of an episode that happened within the Fanti Society, where Reverend Philip Kwaku, who was brought by the Church Missionary Society, Society for Propagation of Gospel of the Anglican Church.
So he was brought back into Ghana, right?
Yes, to come and spread the gospel. When he came, he was actually against things that are local, fetishism, the way people were worshiping in their traditional African ways. He talked about how it was wrong and tried to win souls for Christ.
All right.
In so doing, one time he got sick. And when he got sick, all the prayers, Philip Kweku himself, he got sick, all the prayers and things that went on, he couldn't heal. So he went to a local herbalist, and the herbalist gave some medication, and then he got healed. So the people say he has gone Fanti way.
Oh, I see.
So out of this episode, they created a movement that there is something good in nativity. So they formed the Gone Fanti movement within the Aborigines Right Protection Society.
All right.
And as a result, they call it Gone Fanti, or the Return to Nativity movement.
Oh, wow.
And so they were interested in teaching people how to wear the African dress, how to speak their African languages, and writing about their African stories. So within that period, people were told to write about themselves. So Saba, for example,
that's John Mensah
Saba, for example, will go into the native laws and try to codify them by writing the Fanti customary law, which today is a #1 handbook when we are talking about the customary law in Ghana. And it is used at the law school.
By John Mensah
Saba, the Fanti customary law. He will go and also write about Fanti National Constitution, which talk about the history of the Gold Coast as well as the legal development that took place. J.E. Kesley Hayford would also move on to write about Gold Coast native institutions. He was writing about the institutions of chieftaincy and how democratic they were, and then plead with the colonial administration to rule in tandem with the educated elite and the chiefs, which formed the basis of what we called the indirect rule. So he was bringing how the educated elite could form part of the indigenous chieftaincy or political structure to be used for governance. Then you have Reverend J.B. Anaman at that time also writing about the Gold Coast history, the history of the Gold Coast, and then adding the Gold Coast Almanac, talking about the history of the people from that time on.
Okay.
So this
Anaman is a Fanti man.
It's a Fanti man.
But he was originally with one of the Orthodox churches.
He was a Methodist Reverend minister. So as I'm saying, when we get to his side, we will add to it.
Okay,
so this Anaman and others, they came together, and the idea of Africanization was brought to the church. And this took place at Anomabo.
Which year? You remember the year?
Yes, in the late 1940s, 1960s. Within the 1960s, what happened was that there was idea what we call radical Methodism or radical Christianism, where the people were trying to introduce Africanization, the ideas into the Methodist Church. This led to some sort of dissent, that people who support the European way of doing things and people who supported introducing African way of doing things. For example, they wanted to come out with their own African songs, not European hymns.
Okay.
And then also introduce African instruments into the way of worship, which the church then has described as fetishism. And so must not be
our kind of drums and our kind of maracas and all those things.
And even the clapping of hand was seen as a sort of fetishism.
Wow.
Because they see this being done by the Akonfu and Abosomofu in their various shrines and community. And so introducing that kind of thing into the church worship was deemed as demonic. And so therefore they were not interested. But people like Anaman, people like Kesley Hayford and the members of the Fanti movement begin to fight against that way of practice, that European way is not an African way. And then Africans have their own way of also worshiping God. So Anaman, for instance, will come out and write the first Ebibinyum, which is Yanananum, which many people know.
Oh, this same song,
yes.
So this came from Anaman.
Anaman in 1888, what we call Nanam. And he was actually using it to talk about how the Fanti Obidan, where the deity of the Bobam Fanti, what we call Nananumumpo, and how the Akonfu used tricks, and then it was later destroyed, and then the word of God was spread by Thomas Birch Freeman around that time. And so he wrote the Nanam to talk about the fact that the Africans already knew about God. Even though they worship deity, they knew the existence of God in their African understanding or the worldview. So that is what happened. But now, as you said, we are on the street of Polygonal. And one of the later AICs or African Independence Churches is
Divine Healers
the
Church.
Divine Healers Church. So Divine Healers Church was started by a man called Gilbert Lawson. Gilbert Lawson or Gilbert Abro Lawson. That is his full name.
We used to call him Brother Lawson.
Lawson. So he was born in 4th November 1908 in Polygonal here. And then he started his schooling in a government boys' school. And then he was a member of the Anglican Church.
Oh, I see.
So while he was a member of Anglican Church,
he himself was a member of the Anglican Church
originally. And then while he was in Anglican Church, he also took after school. When he reached standard 4, his brother died. His brother Albert, who was taking care of him. So he moved to stay with his other cousin called James Myers. So while with James Myers, he completed his school and then got a job at the Gold Coast Post and Telecommunication Organization.
That's a post office,
Accra Post Office.
Near Watu.
Near Watu. So while he was there, one day there was a sort of what we call the rally or a crusade at Gal Manchester Palace by Reverend James White, of
No, that's
latter
Mancha
rain.
Agbona.
Mancha
Agbona.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
that's Jamestown Manchester Palace.
So he
yeah.
went for that crusade, which was then organized by Latest Rain,
Latter Rain.
movement,
Oh, the
which was
Latter
coming
Rain
from
movement.
New York in United States. And the reverend who was leading was Dr. James White.
Wow.
And during the crusade, the Spirit of God actually took him into trance. And according to the story, he saw the glory of God. And as a result, he was baptized and immersed in the sea, which is the sea at
Next door, man.
next door. And afterwards, he was baptized into the Apostolic Church.
Oh, he was the Apostolic Church.
Yes,
That's the Apostolic Church that we know.
Yes, the original
Okay.
Apostolic Church, and which came from Bradford in UK.
Bradford, Northern England. Yeah.
Northern England. So while he was he had opportunity of coming into contact with James McKeown.
Oh, McKeown,
Yes,
who
Mac-
was also
a member
of the
and a
a
missionary
leading member of the Apostolic Church at the time.
So with McKeown, they moved around and started organizing missionary
work,
activities and praying. While he was moving on, later on, he also went for a crusade at Teshi. It was at Teshi crusade of the Apostolic Church that his eyes opened, and for the first time, he saw Jesus Christ face to face, and his life changed. And when his life changed, he decided to go into full-time ministry by opening his first prayer center.
We are still talking about Brother Lawson.
Brother Lawson,
of the
yes.
Divine Healers Church. Yeah.
So he opened his first prayer center, which he called the Divine Healers Temple, which was then at Nsawam.
Oh, I see.
So when he started with it and his activity, the way they were going about their things with Africanist idea, singing, clapping, using banjo strings and other African instruments to pray, the church actually had some divisions between them.
Oh, really?
And as a result, he moved out and then founded the Lord is There Temple
Wow.
in 1954.
Oh.
So from Divine
Healers
Healers
Temple.
Temple, which was closed down as a result of the differences between him and the
yeah.
Apostolic Church, he founded the Lord is There Temple.
So let me ask, while he started the Divine Healers Temple, he was still a member of the Apostolic Church?
He was still a member of Apostolic Church.
And McKeown was still a member?
And McKeown was still a member
Okay.
when he moved out to find the Lord is There Temple.
The Lord is There Temple.
With the Lord is There Temple, by 1955, the church has become very big, and then he moved on to become the Divine Healers Church.
Okay.
And then in the same 55, he came out with a magazine, the Divine Healers Magazine.
As in print magazine?
As in print magazine,
Wow.
which is the first Christian magazine in this country.
Oh, wow.
Where the people, all the prayers and miracles that he has offered to people, people write their confessions, people write the miracles they have received from him into the church. And then he made a brochure of it, about 24 in number, between 1966 and 1967, where he came out to say that his church have about 190,000 membership.
In Ghana?
With the capital at Accra, Koligono, where we stand here today.
Yeah.
With some at Mamprobi, some at Accra New Town,
Yeah.
Tama, Adafo, in Cape Coast, and
Latebiokoshi. This
and
whole
so many
area had
places.
Divine Healers Church all over the place, all the way to Kanishi and, you know.
Of course. So with this authority, it is one said that he predicted on the birth of the Gamanche at the time, and the time he would die. And he lived to see that all those prophecies that he gave came to pass. So people call him the prophet or the man for the Gadambe society.
Oh, I
as
see.
a result of that. And again, this man has a unique way of actually doing his miracles. He used handkerchiefs. And
so did he introduce this handkerchief thing?
yes,
Yeah?
so he was the first to use the handkerchiefs. And the handkerchiefs he gives to members. So wherever you are suffering from any ailment, you use it, the handkerchief, you touch at the place, or you wipe wherever it is, there's an infection or anything is affecting you, and it will go away.
Okay.
And he also have holy water.
Okay.
That holy water, it springs on you, and when it springs on you,
and it is
whatever,
believed that you get healed.
you get the healing.
Okay, so people, we are still celebrating our Heritage Month here on ChannelOne TV and City FM if you are listening on radio. My name is Samuel Atamensa, and the voice you hear is Negritian Ankra. Now we can safely call him a historian. He puts a lot of these stories in the right perspective. We will take a short break. When we come back, we will let you see what has become of the divine Brother Lawson's Divine Healers Church. Now, if you grew up in the 70s and in the 80s, you won't be stranger to Brother Lawson, where in this entire area, we used to refer to them as Yesu Bami. We'll be right back.
At Sugar Laundry and Cleaning Service, we take up residential and commercial laundry and cleaning services. So for the laundry, we wash, press, fold, and dry clean, carpet cleaning, power robes, sofas, bags, wedding gowns, suits, jackets, etc. We do general cleaning for households and institutions who are moving in and out of their homes. We are equipped, we are convenient, we are affordable, and we have a state-of-the-art laundry room that takes care of all your needs. Contact us today on 0598 02 4224 as well as 0241 815733. Remember to reach us on our social media platforms at Sugar Laundry and Cleaning Service on Facebook, Instagram, and also on Google. Sugar Laundry and Cleaning Services, always at your service.
When it comes to the miraculous, the healing ministry, there are only few in this country that have walked that path. People like Brother Lawson, divine healers, Yesu Bami. Some of you were young, but there was nothing that came before him in Yesu Bami.
And across the world, there were men who were raised. In fact, in Ghana, we had somebody who was called Brother Lawson, the founder of Divine Healers Church. Brother Lawson was so anointed. They said when you were going to his house, there was a palm tree or coconut tree where he used to go and pray. And as he prayed, he would hold the coconut tree and be praying. And you know, if you were going to his house and you were sick and you touched the coconut tree, you got your healing.
Welcome back. This is the Heritage Month, and on this episode we are talking about African independent churches and how they all emerged and where they are now. And I have Negritian Ankra or Negritian Ankra. Is your Negritian Gan or Fanti or Ekrapim?
It's Gan.
It's Gan. Of course, every Negritian must have come from Utumlo, where my mother comes from as well. So anyway, Soni, you are talking about the Divine Healers Church. In fact, we are actually shooting from the headquarters where it all started of the Divine Healers Church. I mean, when we were kids, it was just a huge, it was big. It looked so big, but now, Charlie, we all grow. So I think, you know, but I think there's some remnant of the roofing, the old structure there that we can go and see. Soni, tell us more about this. Yeah, let's go.
This place was donated by one Hanson to the Reverend.
Oh, I see.
So,
the facility.
The facility. So
was donated.
So he had this church here, and then he became so renowned. He became so renowned that Reverend Duplex C of United States came to visit him. You have Nancy Porter also visiting him here to see how his miracles were going on. We have the famous Nigerian evangelist and then preacher, Bishop Benson Idahosa.
Oh, Idahosa too
also
came here?
coming to meet him.
They came here?
Idahosa came here.
So Duplessis was here, Porter was here.
Nance Porter was here.
And then
Benson Idahosa was here.
Which year would this be? Because Idahosa later moved to live in Ghana.
Yes, in the 1970s.
That must be 60s
and 70s.
Yeah, must be 60s, yes.
And then also we have Billy Graham also coming to visit him.
You don't say.
With A.A. Allen, where they had interviews.
No, hang on. You are moving too fast, my brother. Charlie, you've defined the whole space. So you had Benson Idahosa from Benin City.
Yeah.
That's Church of God Missions International.
Yeah.
He came here. A.A. Allen was a major authority in this evangelical movement in the U.S. He also came here.
He also came here to visit him.
And did you say Billy Graham?
Billy Graham.
Oh, no, my days.
And the two of them all had joint interviews with him.
Oh, wow.
About the nature of the African dependent churches, miracles, and the ideas about
Billy
God.
Graham came here also. If I be careful, he came here. Go on.
So so he was really a famous man.
Oh, yeah.
That really made his name.
Yes,
and that shows you why people like Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams, Ajina Sari, and Ampia Kofis always touting the name of Brother Lawson, because he is a man whom their own mentor actually had a sort of spiritual interactions with to understand.
Which is Benson Idahosa.
Yeah. So it shows you how the man actually grew his church. And there is a way he managed his church.
Tell me.
In his church, he was the leader. And then he had a personal staff, which constitutes Helena, I've forgotten the name, and then Mrs. Gifty Atram, who were the two people who were composing his staff. Okay. And then he had the inner circle. The inner circle consisted of people who were spiritually gifted, and they pray all the time for the church. So the inner circle, if you are not spiritually active, you could not be part of it.
So these were people who organized continuous prayer meetings.
Because
all the time. You know, back in the day, any time like this time, by the time you pass here, the whole street is full of people, and there was constant prayer going on here.
Particularly on Fridays.
Oh, Fridays was
their number one day where everybody comes and meets. And with this, he was able to cure many sicknesses. He was able to heal a lot of people. He was also able to spread. But their form of evangelism was different. Unlike many churches that have evangelical priests and also certain clergy who goes around to spread the gospel, they believe that people whom they have healed will spread the gospel.
Oh, okay.
And then the new convent that also came, whom they feel are anointed with the glory of God, will also go and spread.
Okay.
So the church leaders never went out, but this was done by the church members themselves.
Okay. All right.
And so he moved this church, and this church grew to become one of the biggest churches of its time. Until he himself grew very old. By 1988, he was so weak, he could not do certain things. So Reverend Afra Ama was made to head the church. And upon his death in 1989, the church came out with a new rules and regulation that you can hold position for 5 years. And then when you reach the age of 65, you are retired. Unfortunately, some people reach that age and they refuse to retire. And this led to a sort of legal tussle in the church, which affected the development of the church.
Their soul is willing, but their body is not willing.
Yes, so that is how this wonderful church finally went down from 8 glorious days to become what we are seeing today.
Wow. So this will be the story of Brother Lawson's Divine Healers Church. And there were others, several of them. I am familiar with this because I used to be in the area myself, not in Kolegono, but Kolebu, Gamashi, and Brother Lawson's church was a very, very popular one, on the lips of many people. And it was also a reference point in the whole concept of Pentecostalism, where people will pray in tongues, people will do prayer and fasting, they call it dry fasting, and those people were very tough spiritually, And it's also influenced the later emergence of the faith movement, which we also call charismatic movement. But you also mentioned Reverend Anaman.
Yeah.
And the Negritian church. Tell me about that.
So Reverend Anaman was born in 1866. His own father, Atanumabo, his own father was Reverend Isaac Anaman, who was a conformist Wesleyan minister.
Wow.
I say conformist because he didn't believe, because of the Fanti movement, people who have English names have started changing their names back to African names.
Oh, wow.
So his name Anaman is what in Fanti we call Anamoa. So that is how the name came from. So his son, Jacob, who had become an intellectual, were also the people who were fighting that people should change their name from its Anglicization to its Fanti form.
Yeah.
So people called Taylor changed their name to Teria. People called Dixon who changed their name to Danso, and so many names.
Wow.
I can give a list of Fanti names that had become Anglicized. They changed them. Hayford is from Efua, so Hayford became Efua. Efua, Fog, and it became Hayford. So people were then changing their names in order
so they
to
picked
mean
the English
that
names.
sort of thing. And Reverend Isaac Anaman was against the fact that if people have changed their name to whatever it is, particularly for the Euro-Africans or what others call mulattoes, that the mulattoes
or half caste.
So those called the Minows, the Vanderpoys, and so should maintain their name because their ancestors were Europeans and that their names should not be changed back to African. So his son, growing up under his father, was able to, he was schooled at Anumabo, Methodist school at Anumabo, and then he used advantage of his father's friendship with other reverend ministers like Richard Russell and then Reverend William Canal, who was with Fanti, and he was able to learn Greek, Latin, Hebrew, mathematics, theology.
They taught him, or he studied on his own?
He studied on his own with these reverend ministers, and he became very good in the language.
With Latin?
With Latin,
with Greek language?
And Hebrew. And he became an authoritative linguist in the language.
Whoa.
Later, he was ordained by the church.
That's the Methodist
the
church?
Methodist church, and he became a Methodist minister. He went on to be ordained, to be initiated also into Freemasonry. And later on,
Freemasonry?
Yeah, Freemasonry at the time. And then he also went on to become the editor of the Methodist newspaper, the Methodist Times. And he edited it as one of the champions of the gun. And he was one of the people who made it possible for the Fanti language to be translated. He himself wrote with Reverend Canal the first Fanti dictionary.
Wow.
And then he also came with the Fanti spelling grammar. He went on to write about the Nzema grammar and other languages so that people can work within their language. But one of the things he did within the church was to introduce singing bands.
Yeah, singing band, the way we know.
Singing bands, so where they use the local drums, local musics, and what
and this is within the Methodist church.
Within the Methodist church. And he took his time to also translate the English version of the hymns into Fanti. And then he wrote his own versions of the Ebibinyum. The first one was Fanti Tete Njum, and then Nananum, which he wrote.
Which was the one you
The one
Nananum.
Yes.
Nayenze Yehovah.
And then he went on to write Ebibinyum within it. However, because of a singing band and the way they were singing in native language, which the Europeans didn't understand, they tagged it as fetishism. And that he had.
And the Europeans at the time were controlling the Methodist church.
And so he had a sort of confrontation between them. And as a result, in 1907, he walked out of the Methodist church and founded Negritian Episcopal Church. Negritian means Negro, Negro's church in 1907. And then he introduced the use of African language. And he stated in his church mission in 1907 that this church, everything is done in Fanti language, pure and simple, unquote. So with that, he introduced the Impinti, the Azwa, the Adenkum, and all that sort of singing.
I'm sure that attracted a lot of Fantis.
Yes, and that really attracted a lot of Fantis in the church. And as a result of what he did, James Christian Hayford also moved out of the Methodist Church to found the Gold Coast Baptist Church to support what he was doing.
Yeah.
And this
still in the spirit of the Gone Fanti movement.
Yeah. And this sort of thing made them one of the people to open the floodgate for the African independent churches to emerge. So there are boys like Reverend Joseph William Ejanka Apia, aka Jemisi Biham, Jehu Apia.
No, calm down. Joseph William Ejanka Apia.
Yes.
AKA what?
Jemisi Biham.
Jemisi Miham. Jehu Apia. So this is heading towards Mozama.
That is the Akaboha. The first.
That's Mozama Disco Christo Church. People, unfortunately, this is where we draw the curtains on this episode. You've been listening to a special edition of Heritage Month conversations, celebrating our own heritage, learning from the past. And on this episode, you heard Kweku Dakon Ankra talking about African independent churches. We have talked about a few of them, the key ones, the Negritian Church and then the Divine Healers Church. We will continue some other time talking about other African independent churches. My name is Samuel Atamens and you've been listening to Channel One TV, City FM. Thanks for watching.
All right, so that was the Heritage on Air series. I'm looking forward to part 2 for sure. This is it for Breakfast Daily. My name is David Kwekusichi.
And my name is Piscata. See you tomorrow for a brand new episode right here at 7:25 a.m.
Ago.